Presence of mind is hugely important in chess, as it is in life. Now, there are different ways of looking at this issue. One would be to fixate on the zone, that highly revered place that fabled athletes sometimes reach, where the basketball hoop becomes the size of a lake, or time seems to slow down. The truth is that this state of deep concentration can be reached by all of us, with surprising consistency. In my book that this course is based on, most of Part 3 is devoted to my ideas about performance psychology, and in Chapter 17 I describe my system for building your trigger, so you can enter the zone at will. If you're interested in peak performance, I recommend you carefully work through the process I describe. Right now, I'm going to look at this idea of presence from a slightly different perspective. We're not going to talk about some austere state of transcendent concentration. We're simply going to talk about being alert in the moment, because frankly, this is a huge first step that most people neglect. So many chess players play automatically, especially early in the game. They go through the motions, develop their pieces, play for memorization, even if they've never seen the position in front of them. It's as if they don't want to turn the active part of their brain on, and so they try to remember instead of beginning to create. One of many problems with this automatic state is that you're playing without your spidey sense. You know what I mean, that instinct that tells you when danger or sudden opportunity is near. Of course, there's nothing mystical involved. As you get better, you'll internalize more and more principles, and when your opponent makes decisions which violate the laws of chess, you'll know to look for a creative refutation. Something will start to tingle inside. Check out this game. This is another classic matchup between the innovative Danish grandmaster Bent Larsen and the world champion at the time of this game, Boris Spassky. The year before this matchup, Spassky had beaten the great positional genius Tigran Petrosian to become world champion. Spassky retained the title for 3 years until he lost a famous match in 1972 against Bobby Fischer. Unfortunately, many people outside of the chess world only know Spassky for losing to Fischer, but Boris is an amazing character in his own right, very charismatic, debonair, and over-the-board his universal style gave him unusual flexibility to craft elaborate strategies against the psychologies of his opponents. Larsen begins this game with the unusual move b3, an opening that's been named after him, and it seems to violate basic principles right off the bat. Let's take a look. When your opponent makes a move like b3, an unprincipled decision in the opening, okay, he hasn't taken the center, so you with the black pieces can take the center. Spassky played e5. Bishop b2, attacking the pawn, knight c6. This is one of the reasons why there's no real reason to study the opening extensively, especially in the beginning of your chess play. Your opponent can always make a move which avoids your opening preparation, like b3. But if you know the chess principles, you can work your way through the situation. b3, e5, bishop b2, knight c6. Here Larsen played c4. Now we've transposed into the English. Knight f6, knight f3. Spassky played e4, kicking that knight to d4, and then he played bishop c5, knight c6, dc6. This is a typical type of opening by Spassky. He's taken advantage of Larsen's strange play with b3. He's got a strong central pawn on e4, and he's played d takes c6, allowing his pawns to be doubled, but also, usually in chess you want to take towards the center with b takes c6, but d takes c6 is a specific type of decision. He's opened up the mobility of his queenside bishop. This bishop on c8 is going to be very strong, jumping out to squares like f5 or g4, and later if he plays a move like queen d7 and puts a rook on d8, that d2 pawn is going to come under attack. After d takes c6, Larsen played e3. Spassky played bishop f5. Now, d2 is a target. He doesn't want to allow d4, so bishop f5 loads up on that square. Remember, if white plays d4, black has the option of e takes d3 en passant. Now the bishop on f5 guards that square, so he's locking down a potential weakness on d2. Here, Larsen played queen c2, queen e7, bishop e2, castles. And here Larsen made the move f4. This is the moment that Spassky's alarm bell started to quiver. White's king is stuck in the center, and he's opened up a draft. Larsen figured he could use the pin to the e4 pawn to expand his pawn structure, but now Spassky is on the prowl. What would you play here? Spassky began with the move knight g4. One way to handle a king stuck in the center is to stop castling while building a central attack. If black had made a normal move, like rook e8, white could have castled, completed his development, and everything would be fine. After knight g4, the idea is that if castles, black has queen h4, threatening mate on h2, and suddenly white has a lot to deal with. After knight g4, white played g3, stopping the queen from jumping into h4. And now, Spassky jumped all over Larsen's position. You see, this is what I'm talking about when I say presence in the moment. The game was normal. It was evolving. f4 was a strange decision that immediately Spassky saw weaknesses. He jumped into knight g4, aiming for the h4 square. Now after g3, Spassky came up with another move, aiming for that g3 square. He played the very strong h5. And now, his idea is to play h4 and undermine the kingside position more, but Larsen seems to stop it with the move h3. This is the critical position of the game. Black to move. What should you do? Well, the normal move would be to go back, knight f6. But then white can just play knight c3, followed by castle and queenside, and everything is perfectly fine. This is the kind of position where you have to have incredible presence. You have to notice every little wrinkle in the way your opponent is playing. Here, Spassky's intuition was telling him that Larsen had made a mistake. You're not going to just look and see the move that Spassky played here. What you're going to do is have a sense that there's something in the position for black. Then you're going to start to search. And as you search, you'll go deeper and deeper, explore the nuances, and ultimately find the right move. That's the way you find this kind of decision. So now, you know there's something here for black. You know there's something unusual, because I've told you. Your chess intuition might inform you in a chess game. Over time, when you play chess more and more, when you study the principles, you'll be alerted to this kind of moment by this tingling you feel inside. Right now, black to play. What should you do? Spassky played the very strong move, h4. A sacrifice based on the fact that white's king is stuck in the middle of the board and he's opening up the king side by force. You see the idea? Well, first of all, if g takes h4, obviously queen takes h4 check will win the game. Black has jumped in. There's nothing for white to do. If he goes to f1, queen f2 will be mate. And if he goes to d1, knight f2 check, wins a rook. And it won't stop there. Obviously, the critical element of h4 is what happens if he takes the knight. H takes g4. That's what Larsen did. Now, what was Spassky's idea? H takes g3. So here, Larsen played rook g1. You see what would have happened after rook takes h8, rook takes h8, g takes f5? Good. Here, rook h1 check. The only legal move is bishop f1. And next is g2. Attacking that bishop, of course, the bishop is pinned to the king by the black rook on h1. Next move is going to be g takes f1, make a queen, and win the game. So he can't take our bishop on f5. And if white instead plays the move bishop to f1, there are actually a bunch of ways for black to win this position. The one I like best is queen h4, threatening g2 check, and after bishop g2, you can play the beautiful move queen h1 check. Sacrificing the queen after bishop takes h1, rook takes h1, king e2. You see the best move? No, that's not the best move. Try again. No, that's not the best move. Try again. Mate and 1 for black. Bishop takes g4. Checkmate. So Larsen couldn't take on h8. He needs that rook for the defense. And he realized that. He played the move rook g1. Now, you will not believe Spassky's next move. Every attacking idea here is unusual and incredibly powerful. Black to move. The key to this attack is that white's king is stuck in the middle of the board. If white gets 2 free moves, for example knight c3 and castle queenside, everything changes. So here black has to keep on forcing the issue. Obviously he had to see this move before he sacrificed the material. Black to move. Do you see it? This unusual pawn on g3 really changes the dynamic and makes all of the attacking ideas kind of counterintuitive. Spassky's move was rook to h1. A rook sacrifice. We've already given up a piece. Now we give up the rook. Obviously, white has to take it. Rook takes h1. And now, for black. Do you see his idea? Good. g2. Pushing that pawn. You see how Spassky is opening up the diagonal to bring his queen into the attack with check? Here white only has 2 possibilities, rook g1 and rook f1. Notice once again how the queen on c2 is locked out of the defense. The king on e1 is stuck there. There's nothing he can do. And also notice how after rook g1, Spassky's move that's coming, I'm sure you see it now, queen h4 check, is based on the weakness which triggered his innovative move. It was f4 that white played that made Spassky find knight g4 and then this incredible piece sacrifice with h5, h4, h takes g3. It all started with the move f4 and the wonderful entry move queen h4 check takes direct advantage of f4. King d1 is the only move for white here. And now Spassky's idea, queen h1. Attacking that rook. Obviously, if Larsen takes it, then g takes h1. The only move is bishop f1. And then queen takes f1 will be checkmate. So after queen h1, the only thing for white to do is to make some space for the king to run to, a move like queen c3. And then after queen takes g1 check, king c2, queen f2, knight a3 tries to stop another queen from coming into the board, opening up the rook's defense of the g1 square. But here, no problem. You can just take the bishop on e2. This pawn on g2 is deadly, and after g takes f5, think about a bunch of the themes we've been working on so far in this course. Removing the defender, blocking the opponent's defenses. Here, the white queen is needed to defend the d2 and d3 squares. The white rook on a1 is needed to defend the g1 square. So if we can force the white king to the back rank, then we can make a queen with check and we'll have 2 queens. If we can force the white queen off of the defense of, for example, the d3 square, then we can play queen d3 check, forcing the white king back. Those are the elements alive in this position. With that said, black to move, what would you do? Very good. Bishop b4. Very strong. Attacking the white queen. The queen has to go somewhere. Otherwise, if we win the queen, we're up a queen and we win the game. He has to move. If he plays queen takes b4 now, queen d3 check, forcing the white king back to the back rank. Then you make a queen, or a rook for that matter, and it's checkmate. This is a classic example of removing the defender. Notice, of course, if he goes to g7, you can still play queen d3 check, or you can play queen takes d2 check. Okay, so we see that if rook g1, then queen h4 check, followed by queen h1, would win the game. Seeing that, Larsson played the move rook to f1, keeping the rook on a square where it's defended. Of course, he's hoping that Spassky would take it, g takes f1, just winning a rook but giving up the queening possibility. Now, black to play. What do you do? Right, bring the queen into the game. Queen h4 check, king d1. Now is the moment. G takes f1 check, bishop takes f1, and now, bring another piece into the attack. Excellent. Bishop takes g4 check. What happens if white blocks with bishop e2? Do you see mate in 1? Very good. Queen h1 is checkmate. And if he goes to c1, what do you do now? Enter the position. Excellent. Queen e1 check. The only move for white is queen d1. And now, cap it off with a mate. Queen takes d1, checkmate. Excellent. So in fact, after g takes f1, Larsson resigned the game. Always be on the lookout for unusual ways to exploit an opponent's mistake. Once again, this game underscores the huge importance of learning chess principles. Becoming a stronger chess player is all about improving your chess intuition. You learn more and more principles and get better and better at combining them in your mind when evaluating a certain position or a move of your opponent. Eventually, you won't think about the principles, but you'll live by them. You'll feel them. I call this the study of numbers to leave numbers, and it's a critical method of learning that I've used in both chess and in the martial arts. Once you've internalized the foundational arsenal of principles, if you are present in the moment, you'll just know something is off when your opponent makes a bad move. It'll be in your hands, your skin. You'll smell it. Something is here, I just have to find it. That's how Spassky found the unusual refutation to Larsson's f4. Something felt wrong about the move, and so Spassky started searching. Once again, see the great Paul Morphy in action. This one is actually a blindfold exhibition against an amateur player named Schulten. I want you to notice how Morphy senses a small inaccuracy, a violation of the principles, and then jumps all over the attack. The power of presence. Here Schulten played e4, e5, f4, the king's gambit. Morphy played d5. An excellent counter. E takes d5, and e4. This type of decision is always a good way to turn a gambiteer against himself. Black insists on not accepting the gambit, but actually sacrificing a pawn of his own to gain this kind of structural advantage. Also, the pawn on d5 now is somewhat weak. He can take it back eventually. And basically what he's done is turn the opponent's tactic against him. Knight c3, knight f6. Here Sultan played d3, and after bishop b4, bishop d2. If Morphy had been playing against somebody a little bit stronger, my guess is he would have played a bit more solidly with black. But in this situation, he chose the unusual move e3. His idea is that he wants to get an initiative. He just wants to attack. So white has played bishop d2, blocking this pin, and he decided he would play e3, opening up the e-file and forcing white to lose 2 moves. Bishop takes e3, and now everyone, including myself, would expect the move knight takes d5, both attacking the knight and the bishop. But no, Morphy, in Morphy's style, plays the move castle. So white actually played the king's gambit, sacrificing a pawn. Morphy declined the king's gambit and has sacrificed 2 pawns of his own. It's like they're fighting to give up material. This isn't always the best way to play chess, believe me, but in this game, you're seeing the power of Morphy's intuitive understanding of both his opponent and of the position. Here, the move e3, pawn sacrifice, forced white to play bishop takes e3, and then castling. Morphy's next move is pretty straightforward. It's going to be rook e8. You see, white's king is stuck in the middle of the board. Morphy seized on the moment. He sensed something a little bit off in white's game. And now, he's going to go after the center. After castling, white brought the bishop back to d2. Certainly not the best move, but okay. Once again, you see, rook e8 check is the move you'd expect, but not by Morphy. My guess is that after rook e8 check, Morphy wanted to avoid either knight e4 or knight e2. White can afford to give up a pawn to consolidate the position, and if he plays, for example, knight e2, he's got a lot of pieces defending that square. What Morphy's idea is that he wants to pile up on the e-file and make white have a very hard time protecting his king. So he plays the incredibly unusual decision, bishop takes c3. B takes c3. And now, rook e8 check. Bishop e2. What's the main thing you look to do when you have a pinned piece? Pile up on it. This is Morphy's idea. You see, by removing this knight on c3, he took away one of the defenders of the e2 square. So he gave up a bishop in a semi-open game to do so. That's a risk. That dark square bishop was a very strong piece, but Morphy was playing very specifically, concretely. He's going to pile up on that bishop on e2. He played the move bishop to g4. So now we can feel white's trouble. A move like knight f3. Imagine the pawn structure. After bishop takes f3, g takes f3. Because remember that bishop on e2 is pinned. White can't really castle kingside. After knight takes d5, for example, queen h4 check is coming. This position is really horrible. So white decided to maintain his material. This d5 pawn is there, and even if it wasn't there, black might consider playing knight d5 or queen d5 next move, so the move c4 seemed logical. Like any great player who's sacrificed material, he's not stressed out about winning back material right away. He's developing his initiative. He played c6. The idea of this move is obviously c takes d5 is going to come. And after d takes c6, which is what Sultan played, Morphy brought another attacking piece into the game. Knight takes c6. This is good chess. You've sacrificed material, now you take the time, develop your pieces, build the pressure on your opponent's game. Sultan has a problem. His bishop on e2 can't move. White has a lot of pressure on his game. he decided to move his king to allow himself to be able to move his bishop. You see here that if knight f3, black can now actually win by force. How do you pile up on that bishop on e2? Here the best move is bishop takes f3 first, removing a critical defender. G takes f3, and then pile up on that bishop on e2. Good. Knight d4. And black is completely winning. There's nothing white can do. Next move's going to be either rook takes e2 or knight takes e2. White can't recapture because he loses his queen. He's going to get mated eventually, and he's losing a piece. So for that reason, in this position, Schalten felt somewhat desperate, and he played the move king to f1. He wants to move that bishop on e2. Okay, Schalten has gotten out of a pin. Now, keep present to the position. It's changed character a little bit. You can't do what you had planned on before, because of course, black's threat was knight d4. He's played king f1. If knight d4 now, then simply bishop takes g4 gets out of the way. The bishop on e2 is no longer pinned, and we change it. Make a pin enter the position once again. Black to move. What did Morphy do here? Think about it this way. The bishop on e2 was pinned to the king. Now the king moved. Can you force white to be pinned down once again? Think about it this way. The bishop on e2 was pinned to the king. Now the king moved. Can you force white to be pinned down once again? Morphy played the powerful rook takes e2. And after knight takes e2, look at that. The knight is pinned. The knight can't move because the bishop is pinning it to the queen. So once again, pile up on that pinned piece. Excellent. Knight d4. Here white's position is in desperate trouble. Here Schalten saw that he couldn't play knight takes d4 because of bishop takes d1. He can't defend that knight again, so he decided to get his queen out of the way. He played the move queen b1. Now, Morphy continued the attack. What do? No, that's not the best move. Try again. Right. Bishop takes e2 check. King f2. Now, you remember this kind of position. Keep on attacking, keep on checking, keep on driving that king up towards our way. Black to move. What do? Good. Knight g4 check. Here Shelton played king to g1. What do you think about king g3? Here you check, knight f5 check, very good. And after king h3, now what? Well, here you have two mates. One of them is more beautiful than the other. Queen h4 is checkmate, sure. But you can also checkmate with the three minor pieces alone. Knight f2, a beautiful mate. There's nowhere to run. So after king g1, once again, it's Morphy's move. It's your move. What do you do? This is one of those positions that you can actually calculate the whole way to mate. Here there's lots of things you can do, but there's only one best move. Beautiful. Knight f3 check. The right move. Even the great sacrifices of our classic masters are built in logic and the principles. G takes f3 is forced. Now what do you play? Good. Queen d4 check. King g2. Now we've already learned the main principle of this kind of position. When your opponent's king is running, you're creating a mating net. What do? Drive the king closer and closer towards your camp. All your warriors. Bring him towards your pawns. Bring him away from his defenses. The next move, queen f2 check. Excellent. King h3. What do you do now? Good. Queen takes f3 check. Only one place to go, king h4, and here white resigned the game. Here, and only here, it's time for a quiet move. Once again, think about where you'd want your queen to be. g4. That would be very nice. But g4 is taken by the knight. So, move the knight out of the way. A move like knight h6 is very strong, threatening both queen g4 checkmate, and also knight f5 check drives the king closer into the black camp. This is a typical way to think. Visualize where you'd want your piece to be, and then figure out how to get it there. It's interesting that this happened twice in this game. Once with the knight on d4. We wanted the queen to be on d4, but the knight was on d4, so we sacrificed it. Knight f3 check, and then brought the queen to d4. Now we want the queen to be on g4. No problem. Move the knight out of the way. Knight h6 threatens both queen g4 checkmate and knight f5. Now the only way for white to defend mate on g4 is a move like rook g1. And now, mate in 2. Knight f5 check, once again driving the king closer to our game. King g5. And now, checkmate in one move. Good. Queen h5 is checkmate. And that finishes it up.